From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest. This is Dale Carter's America.
Well, we're back in the podcast studio here today, and if you're wondering where I'm wearing the Missouri Tigers black and gold, I don't know if you follow college basketball or not, Kurt, but over the weekend, number one, Kansas traveled to unranked Mizzou, and Mizzou had their way with Kansas.
Basketball, right?
Yeah, basketball. And this is after the previously number one ranked team in the country also lost to unranked Creighton. So they've lost 2 games to unranked opponents. And, my wife went to Mizzou, so that's why today I am sporting the black and gold.
Yep, there you go.
And I know a lot of our sponsors are big Mizzou fans, like Bob Watson. Bob Watson is a great Mizzou fan, and he's also a fan of the Red, and the Red is State Farm. He's been a State Farm agent for 50 years in the Kansas City area, and he's ready to help you bundle and save, or as Coach Reed might say, bundle Rooski. Because we've got a lot of weird stuff going on with the Kansas City Chiefs. But, of course, Coach Reed and Patrick Mahomes, they're big supporters of State Farm. And the local guy that you should be calling is my friend Bob Watson at 816-229-7878. 7th and Main in Blue Springs, Auto, Home, and Life. He'll bundle Rooski it for you and save you even more. Bundle Rooski your home and car insurance to save big bucks. If it's important enough to insure, you need the best team on your side. That's State Farm, and my guy is Bob Watson, State Farm Insurance. So we're in that interim period between the last month plus of the Biden administration and the Trump administration that is chomping at the bit to get in there. So there's not a lot to talk about there, but we'll get into some of that. But there is some really, really good news out there in a couple of fronts, a couple of cases. There's really, really good news. And we can start with this. The Marine veteran charged in that deadly New York City subway chokehold thing has been found not guilty. Daniel Penny found not guilty. That's good news.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Think if it had gone the other way, and even the mayor, Eric Adams of New York, was pulling for it to go Daniel Penny's way. Because you've been on the subways in New York, I'll bet. It's
been a while, but yeah. And we're actually going to New York over the holidays, my wife and I was like, well, we're not going to have a car. We're taking the train up. It's like, well, we can still get around. We can take an Uber or we can take the subway. And she's like, well, I'm not taking the subway. So, it's not safe anymore.
It's not safe. There's a lot of weird stuff going on down there. And of course, with defund the police, they've cut down the number of the NYPD. So they've got to pick and choose where they're going to be. So if you're on a subway and there's a Marine veteran there and he sees something, right? What is he going to do? He's been trained to intervene and help. Do you want him to just walk the other way? Because I guarantee you, if they had convicted him and he'd gone to jail, that's exactly what would happen. You would make the subways less safe. Now, I'm sorry this guy died, but he was a drug addict. He had drugs running through his system. He had a criminal record as long as my left arm, and he was threatening people. And by the way, something else they don't talk about, there was a black man and a Hispanic man helping him to hold this guy down.
Yeah.
Why did the white Marine get prosecuted?
Because he's white. Obviously.
Yeah. And now, of course, there are groups that are calling for violence in New York. No justice, no peace. That's what they say. No justice, no peace. And I'm sure you got something on that.
Yeah, this is there was a bunch of unrest, and I'll play one of the speakers here in a second, too. This was just a general unrest after the verdict. Apparently, some people were arrested. So that goes on for a while.
Yeah.
And then here is one of the speakers. There was a bunch of BLM speakers. I'm not sure. This guy's some kind of activist. I don't know exactly what his position or title is, but he's straight up calling for violence against white people. So
we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
A little bit of a quiet clip, but you could hear what he said.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the training that Daniel Penny had. I'm not a Marine, but I would like to think as a man that if somebody were threatening women and children on a subway, I might put myself between them.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think that, and so would I. I mean, it's become a lot more complicated than that, though, just because of the woke aspect, and it's a racial aspect. I mean, let's just say it for what it is. You know, if you're a white guy and there is a black criminal attacking somebody, it's the same with cops too. I mean, if you take action, it's very likely that you're going to be charged, you know, and it goes the other way all the time and nothing happens. I mean, people get let out of jail who are, you know, the right skin color and don't get charged or get released by these activist DAs and things like that. I mean, we see that all the time, but it's got to be in the back of your mind if you're just a normal civilian or even a police officer. Like I said, you know, you see something happening, you want to step in and do something about it, but then you're thinking, well, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be prosecuted?
Yeah.
Am I going to go to jail? Is my life going to be ruined? I mean, at the very least, now you're all of a sudden you're a very public figure. Everyone knows your face. Everyone knows your name. And there's consequences to that as well. So,
well, let me give you some evidence to back up exactly what you're saying, okay? This was a white former Marine, and this was a black person who, again, I'm pretty sure I'm on solid ground here. When you get to the medical examiner's report, the drugs in his system probably is what killed him. And that's what the jury thought. That's what the jury believed. But had the white Marine not been there and it was just the black man and the Hispanic man holding this guy back, you would have never heard about this. And I'll take you to Kansas City, Missouri. In the last 24 hours, Kurt, in the last 24 hours in this town, there have been 3 wounded and 3 killed in 3 separate shootings. And you won't hear boo about it after today. And you won't hear any of these activists coming to town. You won't hear Al Sharpton. You won't hear Jesse Jackson because they thumb through the news. And it's like, white guy on a black guy. Boom! There we go. Let's go raise some money off of that. Because that's all they're doing. They've got their hands out and they're panhandling. They've been doing it for 50 years. It's all they know. It's putting this group against that group. That's all they know. Why don't they come to Kansas City, Missouri? Because I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't have the races involved here, but I'm going to guess it's black on black crime because we have it every day in Kansas City and they don't give a shit.
yeah. Yeah, and it's more than just the activists, too. I mean, it's the guy's family. We're seeing that now. The family of the quote-unquote victim is coming out, and they're going to be suing Daniel Penny civilly.
Of course they are.
After the verdict. And it's like, where were you? I mean, where was this guy's family? He was arrested, I think, 40 times prior for all kinds of similar offenses, you know, violent offenses, threatening people, being insane, you know, like this guy needs to be institutionalized or put in jail. And of course, his family is nowhere to be found. I'm sure he had an absent father. I'm sure he had an absent family. All of a sudden, now that the spotlight is on and they see those dollar signs, they show up and they start raising hell.
Yeah. Well, they'll get my attention when they start focusing on the much more prevalent black on black crime that's happening right here in our backyard. And I'm sure it's happening in New York and Chicago, Los Angeles, the bigger cities in this country. Happens every day. It's a good time to celebrate, though. The good news is coming. It's still coming. Now, it's not good news for the former CEO of United Healthcare because he was gunned down in Manhattan. But the good news is we know who did it. And guess what happened there? It's like if you see something, say something. It really paid off because an employee at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania said, the guy sitting in the restaurant kind of looks like that guy up there. Called the police. A rookie cop walks up to him and says, hey, have you been in New York City lately? And then it all falls apart for Luigi Mangione. who, by the way, was valedictorian of his class and went to an Ivy League school. This is what the Ivy League is churning out. He had a problem with United Healthcare, and he solved it by putting a silencer on a gun and putting 3 bullets into the CEO.
Yeah.
How's that going to work out for him?
And apparently there was some things written on it, too, that they're like some kind of slogan about... I mean, look at this guy. What a hunk.
He's ripped. I'll tell you what, when this guy goes to prison, and he's going to go to prison for the rest of his life, they'll be able to put some stuff in your commissary account. You better get a lot of Vaseline, because I think he's going to be really popular.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's some footage. It's pretty blurry, and you can't really, it's not too graphic.
I've seen the video. It's terrible. There's the CEO. The guy. Boom.
Bang. 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 Okay, so...
Oh, he's going to walk over and shoot him again.
Yeah.
Boom. And then he's going to get out of there.
So a couple interesting things about that. I'm a gun nut, as you know, and if you watch that, he's racking the slide after every shot. See how he racks the slide?
Yeah, I see that.
And there's a silencer or a suppressor on the end of his pistol there. You see it right there. And it's really interesting because they were saying that the shell casings had those slogans written on it. It's some kind of anti-big pharma slogan, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But he had written these slogans on the bullets. So the shell casings that they found had these things written on them, but there were shell casings empty, but then there was also bullets, like unfired bullets that they found on the scene. And there was an equal amount of both. So what it looks like is he fires, and I don't know if the weapon's not cycling completely. Sometimes when you put a suppressor on the end, it actually puts back pressure back into the chamber of the firearm. And if you don't practice with it, and if you don't have the right kind of ammunition, and you don't use it beforehand, you might not know, but it might not have enough pressure, back pressure, to actually rack the slide, to actually cycle the weapon. So what I would imagine happened there is he pulls the trigger, and the slide comes back, but it doesn't come back all the way to chamber another round. Either it stovepipes or it just doesn't chamber another round. So he has to rack the slide, ejecting the next full round, and that's the one that they found on the ground. And then a third round is put in the chamber. So I don't know if he didn't know what he was doing. Like it kind of opens a whole series of questions. Did this guy not know how to use the firearm? Was he not experienced? But he knows, he's experienced enough to know to rack the slide. So it's interesting to me. I don't know.
He's going to go to prison for a long time. I think, Alvin Bragg is still the DA for Manhattan, so God knows what's going to happen there. I mean, maybe he'll be a good guy out of all of this. I doubt it. I think he's going to go to prison for the rest of his life. There were assholes in New York who were celebrating this. What is wrong? What is going on in the Ivy League to where these people are protesting on the side of Hamas, people who hate women, who hate gays, yet they're protesting on the side of Hamas. And now they're out there cheering this guy, wearing masks and saying, hey, look at me, I look just like this guy. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of part of the left-wing activist mindset where they cheer on the death of people that they don't like, and we shouldn't do that, obviously.
We should not do that.
I mean, regardless of how you feel about big pharma, apparently this guy was on his way to some sort of investors conference, and something, I guess, was about to come out about the company or whatever, and he had just dumped a bunch of stocks, some insider trading type stuff maybe. There's possibly a connection to Nancy Pelosi, trading stocks. I haven't looked too far into that. But regardless of all that, I mean, that can be bad, but you still don't want to kill the guy, obviously.
It's not acceptable behavior in this country. And the good guys are winning again. And I think the page is about to be turned on a lot of this stuff where we stop weighing, well, I don't know, what race was he in? Did he have an absent father or not? I mean, that shit's going to stop, and it's going to come to a screeching halt, much like your car. If you see a deer coming at you, you step on the brake, and it's like, ear! And hopefully you don't hit the damn thing, but you might. And if you do, you need my pal Dale Reynolds, Dale's Body Shop, Blue Springs, the original Dale's Collision Repair Shop. They have been putting your cars back together when you've cracked them up since 1987. a local company. All right. They're not outsourcing all this stuff. They're local folks right here in Kansas City. Your money stays in Kansas City, and Dale Reynolds is there to pick up the phone if you got a problem after the fact, which I guarantee you will not. So if your car gets in an accident, it's a bad day for you. It's going to be a long day for you. But the first question the wrecker guy is going to ask you is the easiest one you can answer. Where are we taking this thing? We're going to take it to Dale's Body Shop in Blue Springs. All right. I'll give you another really simple thing. You need to get your colonoscopy. If you're 45 or older, you need to get your colonoscopy. You know, we put a lot of bad stuff in our bodies in the United States. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been talking about that, and I think as the head of the Health and Human Services in the next administration, he's going to highlight that. And even the Biden administration's FDA is going after red dye number 3. I mean, look at the list of ingredients, Kurt, of the stuff that we eat. Right?
Yeah.
Is it amazing to anyone that the cancer rates have gone up as they have in this country?
No, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I mean, obesity, cancer, heart disease, all those kind of things. So, yeah, something I've been trying to be better at. I mean, I've got a lot of deer meat, so that helps, but don't always eat the best.
I mean, and I've probably eaten badly in my life, but as a result of any of that, you know, I go and I get my colonoscopy, and I've gotten 2 now, and I've gotten a clean bill of health 2 times, which means I don't have colon cancer brewing down there. You may have. And the best way to get that taken care of is to get the colonoscopy. They get the polyps, they test them, and if you've got it, they put you in the early treatment, and that is very effective. And if you don't and they catch it late, it's probably going to be a death sentence. That's why this is important. That's why 45 is the new 50. It's why you should schedule your colonoscopy with Dr. Mark Taramina and the pros at Midwest GI Health and Wellness. You can find them on the web at MidwestGIHealth.com, and call them up in the office, 816-836-2200, 816-836-2200, MidwestGIHealth.com. This is something that could well save your life, and isn't that worth doing? I think it is.
Yeah.
So the courts and why they matter is our first big segment here, and I skipped over something as you played some videos. I don't know what I was thinking, but there are different ways you can consume this podcast. There is audio only, and I know a lot of you do that, but we'd like to encourage you to get the video version of it. So when we're showing videos and different things, you can see it. And Kurt, how can folks do that?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for tuning in, first of all. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, make sure that you hit that like button, you subscribe, you drop a comment. It all helps the algorithm and get us in front of new people. That's where you can find the video podcasts with our beautiful faces and all the amazing clips that we play. We also have the audio-only version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And then make sure to follow us on Facebook as well, and join in the comment section.
All right. And this is kind of a big deal, and this is why the courts matter. It's why Donald Trump being president the first time around matters. U.S. versus Skrmetti. I think I'm saying that right. It looks like Skrmetti.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah.
Who knows? They need to buy a vowel in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So the Biden administration is essentially suing Tennessee, if I understand this correctly, because one of these cases, you knew they were going to bubble up to the Supreme Court, and it's all about kids wanting to get hormone blockers. Some of them want to have the surgery while they're young so that they can make the full transition because they believe they're women or girls. They believe they're boys, whatever the case may be. And it wound its way to the Supreme Court because Tennessee is one of those states that says you can't do that. You can't do it until you're an adult. And when you're an adult, you know, go with God and do whatever you want to do. But when you're a child, there are certain things you cannot do. And the Biden administration is trying to use the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. They're trying to twist it like a pretzel to make it say what they want to say. And this is the difference between activist judges and constructionists. I'm a big constructionist guy. Okay, and the 6-vote majority on the Supreme Court, many of them put there by Donald Trump, they're constructionists. When a case comes to them, they look at the documents and say, okay, what in the document of the Constitution of the United States as amended gives you the right to do this? Big difference between this court and the Burger Court. And the two comparisons I'll make here, because they both lead to the 14th Amendment. When Roe versus Wade came up in 1973, the Burger Court, which was very liberal, twisted logic. They came up with what was called a penumbra, or a shadow that over the 14th Amendment. If you can think of that, like a cloud going over the 14th Amendment. Oh, what's under the shadow? The shadow is there is a perceived right to privacy that allows women to get abortions. It's not in there. You've got to twist the 14th Amendment like a pretzel in order to get there. But that's what they found, and that's what we lived with Roe versus Wade until this court threw it out and sent it back to the states, where it belonged all along. So what's the upside of that? States have wrestled with this. There have been elections. There's a state like Missouri that Donald Trump won handily, that passed something that Kurt and I would not want to see them pass. But that was the state decision, not a federal decision. And so here we go again. And you just know from the comments of the justices that this is going to be a 6-3 vote.
In the right direction?
In the right direction.
Yeah.
And the asinine comments, this makes you say, what would have happened if Hillary Clinton had won in 2016? She would have appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court. And you can bet they would all be like Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, Ketanji Jackson Brown.
Brown Jackson.
It's Brown Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of these days I'm going to get beyond that block and I'm going to say her name right. But Ketanji, of course, she goes to race, and she says this is the equivalent of race discrimination. Not letting kids have puberty blockers. As far as Sotomayor goes, she compares puberty blockers to taking an aspirin.
Nice.
That's the asinine comments that liberals like what Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton would have appointed would say in something like this. The 6-3 majority is saying, show me why we should get involved in this. And you just know from the comments they're going to throw this back to the local court, as they should, and it's a local problem. This is a 10th Amendment issue. Jurisdiction. That is the important thing to take out of all of this. You know, we can all have our views on whether kids ought to be allowed to do this. I don't think they should. I know you don't think they should. Mm-hmm. And we regulate kids in so many ways, right? We don't let them drink. They're not allowed to smoke. You can't get a tattoo until you're 18, but you can make a conscious decision as a 12-year-old to cut your dick off? Tell me that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, man. Pretty sad.
Yeah.
But here's the, just real quick on SCOTUS blog, I'll read the summary of the case. Whether Tennessee Senate Bill 1, which prohibits all medical treatments intended to allow, quote, a minor to identify with or live as a purported identity inconsistent with the minor's sex, unquote, or to treat, quote, purported discomfort or distress from a discordance between the minor's sex and asserted identity, quote. Whether that violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That's the case.
Well, and it doesn't, you know, because there are so many ways that we treat children differently than we treat adults. So, and I know they're trying to bend it and twist it and say that you're basically saying that trans kids can't do this, but other kids can. Is that what they're trying to say? I don't know. All I know is that the proper jurisdiction is the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. And thank God, as we move forward, we're going to be rational about this at the Supreme Court. For a long time, it looks like, that they're going to look at cases and they're going to say, what is the federal interest in this? And if there's not a federal interest, they'll kick it back. Yeah. To where it belongs. Politics is always practiced best closest to the problem. And that's going to be the state and local level. And we're going to see a lot of cases like this.
I agree with that to a certain extent, but I mean, I don't know, you know, the 10th Amendment, I think, should apply to things that are more localized, you know, that are not really major issues. You know, you think about school policy or taxes or, you know, zoning and things like that. You know, the federal government should have no business in any of that kind of stuff. But, you know, you're talking about major issues of like harm and protecting people's well-being, you know, and in the case of abortion, certainly you're talking about life, which is the most fundamental right that we have. It's the first thing in the Declaration of Independence, basically. So if that can't be protected federally, then what can? I mean, I don't think that belongs to the states. That's just my read of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. We as Americans are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
I get that, and you can preach that all day long, all night long. But what can you turn into public policy?
Right. No, I understand that that's not the reality of the political situation that we're in right now, and that's fine. I'm just saying that, you know, not everything needs to be delegated to the 10th Amendment. We have certain things, you know, that are guaranteed and that are protected in the federal Constitution. And Trump, I'm not to get too off topic, but just to give another example of that, Trump has been talking about, or at least teased, national reciprocity for concealed carry, which is another federal issue. We're guaranteed by the Second Amendment to have the right to protect ourselves, and that should supersede any state's right to deny that.
Totally agreed. You know, in Jackson County, for instance, they just passed an ordinance at Jackson County that says that 18 to 20-year-olds, you got to be 21 in order to buy a firearm, which goes against the Second Amendment. That's a Second Amendment issue. So, again, they're trying to circumvent what we do at a federal level. Yeah. So, you could be a 19-year-old Marine and you can't go buy a gun.
Right.
You can be, an 18-year-old kid or a 20-year-old man who wants to go deer hunting in eastern Jackson County, and you can't because they're trying, in an inept way, in my opinion, to get it to this black-on-black crime. Well, they're going to find ways to get guns in the hood. Yeah. Sorry to say it that way, but they're going to find ways to get guns. And all you're doing is you're impeding what legal gun owners would do. That's why it's completely asinine.
Yeah, and just from a constitutional standpoint, you could have a liberal constitutional professor or something like that, or an attorney, make the case that, well, the 10th Amendment, and, it should be left up to the states because of the 10th Amendment, but that's just not the case, because the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution states that federal law supersedes state and local law for things that federal law is needed for. And the Second Amendment is clearly one of those. It's the Second Amendment to the Constitution.
But it's in the Constitution. That's my point, right?
Yeah.
So
we agree.
All
Let's
right.
just stop rambling.
Well, good. So, when we talk about the Supreme Court, and the Democrats are focusing a lot on the Supreme Court right now because it's a 6-3 conservative majority, and for a lot of reasons, we're very thankful that it's a 6-3 conservative majority, especially with some of the idiotic opinions that are coming from the left. But this doesn't stop at the Supreme Court. We spent a lot of time on last week's episode. If you didn't hear it or didn't see it, you should go back and watch it and see what Senator Kennedy from Louisiana is doing with federal court judges that have been nominated by the Biden administration. They've got 42 days left as we record this, and they are trying to jam as many lifetime appointment liberal judges into the federal system because they would agree with stuff like this. They would, it will eventually get to the Supreme Court level, but do you want people with a lifetime appointment saying that it's okay for minors to change their sex?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we're going through now for sure.
So go back and watch that because and find clips of Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, because first he's a lot of fun to watch, and he takes these liberal judges and takes them through what they have said, not what he says, what they say, and twists their words back at him and say, "Really? Do you really think that?"
He's a very clippable guy.
I find it very funny.
Yeah, he's a very clippable guy, very entertaining.
So interesting stuff going on at the Supreme Court and certainly the federal court level as well. Moving into our next segment, and we want to thank some more of our sponsors here, including Michael Schroer. He's the guy who can help you with your real estate needs. And trust me when I say 2025, the market is going to boom. It's going to be fantastic. You can see the handwriting on the wall. We're going to get out of this whole woke, you can't do this, you can't do that. Regulations are going to be rolled back, taxes are going to be lower, and people are going to be buying houses again. And with his 35 years of residential and commercial construction experience, Michael Schroer is the guy that you need on your side. So if you're ready to move, Ready to get that first house going? Maybe a bigger house, maybe a downsize. Maybe you got a piece of property that you're looking at that you've had your eye on, and you've got like a floor plan that you want to build. Michael Schroer is your guy. Real Estate Pro with RE/MAX Heritage, 816-783-5800, and he's in lockstep with us. He likes a lot of the stuff that we put up on the Facebook page, and we're definitely glad to have him as part of Dale Carter's America.
Thank you, Michael.
As you get closer to 65, maybe you are 65 or older, we are past the Medicare deadline, by the way. If you didn't call my friends at Medicare Simplified KC, you're kind of locked in to what you had going before. But if you're getting closer to 65 or you have questions about Medicare, the pros are Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker. You can reach them at 816-701-6661, on the web at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. There are changes coming. Certainly with a new administration, there will be changes coming. Get ahead of it and find out what you need to know, because Medicare is one of those things that's got like 15,000 permutations. Maybe one of the problems with the federal government is everything has 15,000 permutations. They simplify it. That's why the name Simple is in the name. Medicare Simplified KC, for you and your situation. Reach out to them, especially if you've got a relative, maybe an older relative in your family who's about to be 65. Help them navigate all this and make those decisions easy with Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker at Medicare Simplified KC. Let's jump into the pardons. We talked about this last week, but it was kind of a cursory thing because just as we jumped in here, that was when the pardon had been announced for Hunter Biden. It's a sweeping power that presidents have. You talk about baked into the Constitution. It's very clear. Article 2 of the Constitution, which set up the executive wing of the country, it's limited, of course, to federal crimes. Okay, federal crimes committed. The chief executive, the president of the United States, has vast pardoning powers. Okay, that's why people were saying, well, you know, if Daniel Penny gets convicted and goes to jail, when Trump gets in January, he'll just pardon him. He had no authority to pardon him, would not have happened, couldn't happen. But the most famous pardon, I think, prior to Hunter Biden would be Gerald Ford pardoning Richard Nixon. And, you know, Nixon was probably going to go down. He was probably going to be impeached. That handwriting was on the wall. And it was Republicans who went to the White House and said, Mr. President, it's time to go. And when he left, there was this, you know, feeling in the country that they were still going to prosecute Richard Nixon, and it was tearing the country apart. And Gerald Ford did something that was very brave and probably cost him the 1976 election. He went out and said, we're going to give him a full and complete pardon. And that all went away. That's the power of the presidency. And it probably brought the temperature in the country down, but it led to Jimmy Carter. So decisions have consequences, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know, all presidents have done it, and it's funny because the liberal media is saying, "Whoa, when Donald Trump was in there, look how many people he pardoned." They all do it, right?
Yeah,
for various reasons.
I would too. You know, if I was president, I would give out a lot of pardons for sure.
You know, Bill Clinton pardoned his half brother.
Yeah, this is a clip because it came up. I guess he was at some sort of thing. You know, one of these things where they have the blue background and the fancy chairs and they talk about global warming or whatever the fuck.
Can I just make a catty remark about this clip before you even play it?
Yeah.
Is there a flood somewhere in Bill Clinton's life because his pants are way high and he's wearing the wrong color socks? I mean, wear dark colored socks for crying out loud. You look like a farmer.
Maybe he is.
Well, nothing wrong with farmers, but go ahead.
Yeah, this clip actually cuts off like abruptly at the end, which is annoying, but I couldn't or didn't look that hard to find the full clip, so we're just going to watch it.
This was not on my plan originally, but I thought, you know what? Everybody, we were out in the hallway, they were all talking about that, and I said, I'm going to ask the president first.
Well, I think that the president did have reason to believe that the nature of the offenses involved were likely to produce far stronger adverse consequences for his son than they would for any normal person under the same circumstances. But I would urge all of you to just look at the facts before you make a judgment and see what they're talking about and what the context is. Because I'm still reading, somebody said, well, this is just like when Bill Clinton pardoned his brother. Well, it's not. My brother did 14 months in the federal prison for something he did when he was 20. And I supported it. And he testified, told the truth about what he'd done when he had a drug problem and helped to bring down a larger enterprise. And they sentenced him, and then he served 14.
Yeah, 14 months.
Yeah.
So, well,
can I just comment on that real quick?
Go ahead.
The thing that really stood out to me, and you've heard other people say this too, not just about Hunter Biden, but he says, well, the reason that he had to pardon him is because the consequences would have been worse for him because of who he is, meaning that because he's the president's son, he would have to pay higher consequences than if he was just some random guy. That's the insinuation that he's making. And the truth is the exact opposite. It's literally the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is getting off only because his last name is Biden and he's the son of the president. Otherwise, he'd be in jail already. He's on video, doing all with illegal guns, smoking crack with hookers, all this kind of stuff. And if he wasn't the president's son, he wouldn't have had tens of millions of dollars of payments from foreign energy companies that he had no experience with. Yeah. It's the exact opposite.
Well, this thing went off the rails because he had the sweetheart deal that was going to make it all go away, right? The fix was in from the Justice Department. We've got this sweeping deal here. It's going to make it all go away. And a judge, who was appointed by Trump, looked at that deal and said, this doesn't smell right. Go back to negotiating again. And then it was like, oh, man. So Hunter had already pled guilty to tax evasion. He pled guilty to it. You and I would go to prison for that.
Yeah, and he was found guilty on the gun charge too, right? Or was that one dropped? I don't remember.
I don't remember. But I do know that he pled guilty to tax evasion. And I think the other was a jury trial. Mm-hmm. And a jury of his peers found him guilty on that. But Daddy waved it all away. And the curious dates involved, 1/1 of 14, January 1st of 2014. Who was president then? It was Barack Obama. Through December 1st of this year. Okay, so what does that cover and what's involved there, right? Trump, you may recall, got impeached because of a phone call to Ukraine to ask about it. He said, hey, you guys might want to look into this. He didn't say, we're withholding United States aid until you do. He said, you might want to look into this. And Adam Schiff took that ball and ran with it. And it's like, oh, well, maybe he's getting a little too close to the truth here. We can't investigate that. And I'll remind you then that Joe Biden was not a candidate for president at that time. And the left screamed bloody murder. And they said, we don't do this in the United States. We don't go after political opponents this way. And then they saw the blueprint on that. And, man, they doubled down times about 100 going after Donald Trump. So there is that. Is there stuff here that this is going to cover up? Was Hunter Biden, and I know this is almost sounding like I've got the tinfoil hat on here, and I don't mean to do that, but would Hunter have testified if they put the squeeze on him against his dad, his uncle, anybody else who was involved in this criminal enterprise?
I've heard that theory made a couple times, and I've heard it said that it could have potentially been like an actual threat from Hunter against his dad, saying basically, all these things are starting to come to light about the stuff in Ukraine and the stuff with China, all the money, kickbacks to the big guy, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't pardon me, I'm going to testify against you and you'll be in trouble and all your money's going to go away. So is that possible? Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know if there's any direct evidence of that or not, but it's certainly possible.
Well, there's 42 days to go in this administration. Let's see what the next shoe to drop is, because there are rumors now that there will be other pardons coming even before things are prosecuted, like his brother, Jim Biden. If he pardons Jim Biden for anything he may have done, that ought to tell you something right there. Adam Schiff is on that list. Adam Schiff is the guy who led the Russia hoax and the first impeachment. He was all over that. Liz Cheney is on this list. of people who might get a pardon, a preemptive pardon. Anthony Fauci is on the list. They're all on the list of people being speculated who might get those preemptive pardons.
Is that like a new thing, the preemptive pardon?
I've never heard of it.
Or the date range? Like, I always thought that a pardon was for a specific thing, right? It's for a federal crime. So you are convicted of this federal crime, you go to jail or whatever, and then you're pardoned by the president for that specific crime, right? So what's with the date range? It's like, oh, you're exempt from anything that could potentially have happened within this date range, including things that you haven't even been accused or charged of yet.
Go to the Constitution and look at Article 2 and look at the pardoning power of the president, and there are no specifics to it. The Constitution, if you want to think about it, is written kind of loosely.
Yeah.
And that's why we have a Supreme Court that is there to interpret, where we're going constitutionally. And the beauty of the document, as you're looking for this, is that if you don't like what's in the Constitution, there have been 27 amendments to the United States Constitution, because the framers wrote it knowing that centuries in the future, what they're talking about might not be what we face in the future. So there are ways to amend that Constitution.
Yeah, the language is literally just, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. That's it.
Yeah. So there you go. And it doesn't say whether they need to have been charged, convicted, serving prison time. It's kind of been understood, and that's what presidents have done. But the preemptive pardon, that's news to me. If somebody could find, one of our keyboard warriors out there, they're always really fast on the keyboard. Mm-hmm. They can find some preemptive things that, of course, a Republican has certainly done. And that's why they're doing it. I don't know. Mike Trump, when he's president, pardoned the January 6th defendants. Some of them still being held without charges, and I think he should. You talk about a violation of an amendment. There's the Sixth Amendment, right, which was specifically written so that you could have a speedy trial. It's rights for the accused, and it's supposed to circumvent what's going on with some of these January 6th defendants, that you can stick them in a prison cell for years and years with no charge.
Absolutely. I think they're getting through most of the trials now, or have already gotten through most of the trials. But there was people for 2-3 years. However long it took, and they were in some cases solitary confinement, or being held without bail, awaiting trial. But here's the Sixth Amendment. I'll just read it real quick since you mentioned it. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So that covers speedy and public trial. It also covers the right to face your accused, which is a big deal, and other things of that nature.
Okay, so a lot of the Democrats and the left-wing media have referred to the January 6th thing as an insurgency. So far, not one of these defendants have been charged with treason or insurrection against the United States. Put that aside here for a second, okay? Now, what did these people do? What would the charges be? They might be, what, trespassing in a federal building?
The big charge that they're levying against these guys that are getting the longest sentences, so this is from Politico. These are the longest sentences handed out so far. Enrique Tarrio, who is the leader of the Proud Boys at the time, he wasn't even there, by the way. 22 years. Stuart Rhodes, 18 years. Joe Biggs, another Proud Boy.
Wait a minute. If he wasn't there, how did he get 22 years out of this?
They got all these guys on quote-unquote seditious conspiracy. So basically they got their cell phones, and they were all on like Parler, Telegram, apps like that, and they're having like rah we're gonna show them rah type things, and they turn that into seditious conspiracy.
So we're almost 4 years down line from this. And this just hit the wire today. Let me share this story with you. This is a Fairview, Oklahoma woman gets 4 months in prison, followed by a year of supervised release for her part in the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. 51-year-old Dova Weingart was convicted of attempted destruction of government property which is a misdemeanor. The judge acquitted her of 4 other counts. Weingart did not dispute using a metal-tipped pole to strike at the window of an exterior Capitol door, but claims the pole broke and she did not damage the door glass and she did not go into the Capitol building. So for all of that, almost 4 years later, she gets a sentence of 4 months in prison. Has she been in jail the entire time?
I would imagine so.
That's my question. Where are these people? And might Trump pardon all of the January 6th defendants and move the country forward? I think he could. Because he's got that vast power that allowed Joe Biden to pardon his son in a way that may cover up some things that Joe Biden did. And, you know, what Bill Clinton said there is let the facts play out. And a fact that keeps coming back to me, Kurt, is how did a man like Joe Biden, who never made more than what a senator's salary or a vice president's salary would be, how did he amass all these millions?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Because he's obviously
Ask
not
Hunter.
he's not the brightest bulb, you know, in the chandelier. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. How did he amass all this money without, you know, what Hunter is alleged to have done, without Ukrainian involvement, Russian and Chinese and all that? You can't even ask the question without getting impeached. That's what Donald Trump faced.
Do you think that Trump should pardon the January 6 people?
I do. Especially the ones that we talk about that are waiting in a cell somewhere who did nothing more than walk through the Capitol building. I mean, it was a bad look. At the time, you know I said this, that it was a very bad look. And I wanted Donald Trump to shut it down. He eventually did. It didn't look right. But did it warrant taking people and putting them in small rooms for 4 years? No. Charge them for what they did, get the process moving here. And if what they did is a misdemeanor, give them a short jail term, a fine, time served in the case of this woman from Oklahoma. I think that would be appropriate. And let's move on.
Agreed.
If you need a new roof, it's time to move on with that process. We went through a season with a lot of storms out there, and my friend Austin Watterson and his team at Royal Roofing and Solar, they've been doing a lot of roof inspections. I got a brand new roof out of the deal, and they can do the same thing for you. And if you've got hail damage, maybe they can find a way to offset the cost of that roof. If you're going to be there a while, maybe solar makes some sense for you. Do I think solar can power our entire economy? No, I don't. I think it's ridiculous. But if your house can offset your Evergy bill, that's a conversation worth having, and Mike Dale is ready to have that conversation with you too. Royal Roofing and Solar. It's why they put the two words together there at 816-540-7057. SolarByRoyal.com might answer some of the questions that you have about solar. In fact, Mike Dale won't put solar on your house until you've answered 16 questions to determine if it will even work for you. He's not some guy out there just saying, hey, oh yeah, solar works everywhere. House facing the wrong way? Not a problem. Big tree shading you? Not a problem. Mike Dale is out there to get your business and earn your business. RoyalContractingKC.com. That's the other website. It all ties to that phone number, 816-540-7057. Pizza on your mind? I'd love. We do this podcast, you don't know this, fairly close to lunch. And so I get hungry when we talk about it because I think about all the toppings that Jim Dingman piles so high on his pizzas at Funhouse Pizza. They've got 2 locations, 50 Highway Lee Summit. That's where we do our live events. We love getting together with podcast fans, and we'll do that again in the spring. And Blue Springs is there too, 7 Highway in Blue Springs. Fun atmosphere at both. It's a great place to have your birthday party, anniversary party. If you've got a team meeting coming up, maybe it's a rah-rah session for your staff. Treat them to pizza and cold drinks and a fun atmosphere where they can play some video games at Funhouse Pizza in 2 locations, 50 Highway Lee Summit, 7 Highway in Blue Springs. We are about a month and 10 days away from Donald Trump again raising his right hand and taking the oath of office as President of the United States. But I'll tell you, it kind of feels like he's already president.
Sure does, yeah.
Man, you saw him overseas. He was over in France for the Notre Dame Cathedral reopening after the big fire they had there. I've heard so many commentators call it Notre Dame. No. Notre Dame is a college in South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame is the cathedral there in Paris.
Have some respect, people.
No kidding. I'll bet those people don't even extend their pinky when they drink wine.
Yep.
Right? Notre Dame! Hee-haw!
Heathens.
Notre Dame. Okay, so you've got a clip of President Trump being very presidential. Look at that. I don't know who that guy is. Do you?
No.
Or that guy? I know that guy. That's the Ukrainian guy. That's Zelensky.
Boo.
Yeah. So he's just going up and down the line there, shaking hands, kissing babies.
Look at everyone in the background. Everyone, he's the center of attention in the whole room.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking at him. Everyone's got their phones out.
And have you seen, the folks who opposed Trump in various ways now coming back around saying, hey, I think he's going to do a good job. What's his name? Washington Post guy, bald guy, Amazon, Bezos.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos. I hope he doesn't buy the radio station. What do you mean the guy didn't know my name? Jeff Bezos. He went down to Mar-a-Lago, and he was not a Trump supporter. So he's coming on board, too. So it's a good time to get back on board. There's Prince William, the future king of England and all that. He's just going up and down the line. Okay.
And like I said, everyone is focused on him. Everyone's got their phones out. I mean, he is the center of attention, and he's clearly in charge. You just look at the body language, not only of Trump, but of the people that he's talking to. They have great respect for him. They want to talk to him. They want to be on his good side. These are all things that you want from a leader. So
yeah, and he's going to be leader of the free world. And I know, we've had some disagreements on foreign policy on the podcast, and I get the feeling that you would like to pull up the drawbridges and have Fortress America. In some ways, yes, maybe we can do that, but in other ways, we are the center of the world. Why do you think the United Nations is in New York? We are the center of the world. What we do matters in the world, and I think Donald Trump knows that, especially after spending 4 years as president. So while he's in France, Syria basically collapses, right? Insurgents have taken over. Assad went running for the hills. And you might wonder, why didn't Russia, because they were the state sponsor of Syria, why didn't they jump in and help Assad? Well, they got other problems, right? They've lost, but the combined casualty count between the Ukraine and Russia is 1 million in wounded and killed.
Oof.
1 million people have either lost their life or been deformed because of what's going on there. Russia's got their hands full, right? And Trump was talking about that. And he was saying the United States really doesn't have an interest in Syria. Let's see how it plays out. Meanwhile,
let me read his truth post real quick to give his exact take here. This doesn't have a date on it, but opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now on the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make a very big move toward taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, and all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. But now they are, possibly Assad himself, being forced out, and it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia, other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but is not our friend, and the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved.
He's absolutely right.
100% agree.
Yeah. But what the President of the United States, as the leader of the free world, has to do is project strength. Ronald Reagan projected strength. Joe Biden clearly does not project strength. So what would a Trump foreign policy 2.0 look like? Okay, think about what happened in the transition between Trump and Biden. Actually, go back further, between Obama and Trump. Obama rather, got us into the Paris deal, right?
Yeah, the climate accord.
The climate accords.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Fancy name.
And the Iran nuclear deal. Oh my gosh, man. If we just sign a deal with these guys, they won't make a nuclear weapon. How naive is that? So he tore up both of those deals. right? And then 4 years later, Biden comes in, and he put both of them back in place.
Right.
What do you think will happen with Trump?
I think he might take them away again.
Let's see. I got a piece of paper I don't need. Okay, this will be the Paris deal. And I'm going to get that out of there. Yeah, and then the Iran nuclear deal. That thing's dead on arrival. We won't even tear that up. We'll just wad that up and throw it in the trash. That's what he's going to do, right? And he says, let's see if he's right. He says he's known Vladimir Putin for a long time. He thinks he can wrap up this Russia-Ukraine thing rather quickly.
Yeah.
I think he can, because I think the motivation is there. I think Zelensky wants it over with. I think Putin, very unpopular at home, and look how many soldiers he's lost. He's gotten North Korea involved in it, for God's sake. I think he wants it to go away, too.
I agree. And I just watched last week, Tucker interviewed Putin a while ago. He just interviewed the foreign minister or something like that. I think it's basically the equivalent of like the Secretary of State for Russia. He went back to Moscow and interviewed him. And he was saying more or less the same thing, that they want to resolve it. And, he thinks that maybe Trump will help with that. So we'll see. But this was another good clip too that I wanted to play real quick. This is not about Syria or Assad, but this is an old clip from the first Trump administration. And he's sort of giving one of his staples of the foreign policy thing here, which is sort of relevant.
So Taliban is our enemy. ISIS is our enemy.
Hold
We
on.
have an area.
Sorry, let me restart that with the sound up.
So Taliban is our enemy. ISIS is our enemy. We have an area that I brought up with our generals 4 or 5 weeks ago, where Taliban is here, ISIS is here, and they're fighting each other. I said, why don't you let them fight? Why are we getting in the middle of it? I said, let them fight. They're both our enemies. Let them fight. Sir, we want to do it. They go in and they end up fighting both of them. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I think I would have been a good general, but who knows?
I love the aggressive hand motion. It's like, they're here, and they're fighting each other.
Yeah.
He's so
Look
aggressive.
who's behind him, John Bolton.
John Bolton's chomping at the bit. He's like, I want to go kill some people.
Because there are people on the Republican side who are war hawks and want us to get in every war there is. I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
I try and be a realist about what's going on in the world, and that clip from Trump shows that he is very much a realist, and he'll do a great job again as commander-in-chief.
Yeah, and I mean, there's tons of people calling, for, obviously it's happened now, but for the past 5, 10, 20 years, calling for America to do something about Assad, get rid of Assad. It's like, why? I mean, and not only why, but what's going to happen after we do that? Look at what happened in Libya. Look at what happened in Iraq. They're total shitholes now. They get worse because you just have, random like terrorist groups that just capture people, torture people, fight for power. At least there's stability. It's not good, but I mean, what's the alternative?
I'll remind you again, the most famous quote from Barack Obama that I've quoted many times: elections have consequences. And, one of your keyboard warrior friends basically was trying to debate with me about how nothing's going to change. They're all the same, blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, look what happened with the Iran nuclear deal. One of the first things Joe Biden did, because like a third grader, anything Trump did, Biden overturned it. Even though he came in and he said, hey, I'm just Joe, give me a chance, I'm the middle guy and all that. Well, fool me once, shame on me. You know what the other thing is. So he reinstated the Iran nuclear deal. And what did the Iranians do? They were funneling cash to Hamas. Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. They're funneling money to Hezbollah. Hezbollah's raining down on Israel with missiles and all that. And then the Iranians, of course, remove any subterfuge at all. They load up all those missiles and they fire them right into Israel. So elections have consequences. Actions have consequences. And I'm not suggesting, I don't want you to put words in my mouth, Kurt. I'm not saying we've got to send the fleet over there and level Iran, but having a heavy hand with Iran will put them back in their box.
Okay, yeah.
It will. And Donald Trump is a guy who can put them back in their box. And the first thing he's going to do is he's going to take the handcuffs off Israel, and that will terrify the mullahs in Iran. And he's going to use some pretty strong language. He's used strong language before. And the difference between Biden, who said, don't, remember that? don't. When Trump says, I'll level you and send you back to the Stone Age, they're going to believe it.
Come on, man.
Mr. Tough Guy.
Yeah, well, Trump is a tough guy, and he's going to speak tough. And I think the world is going to be better off for it because people will get back in their boxes and we can go on down the road again. And he can build on the Abraham Accords. He got several countries who were sworn enemies of Israel to sit down with the Israelis and open diplomatic relations. I think he can build on the Abraham Accords, and I am so looking forward to the second Donald Trump administration. I know in the beginning I wanted anybody other than Trump to win that Republican nomination, but Kurt, and I've said it, I was wrong about that. As we get closer to this second administration, I'm all on board. Let's get it done.
All right. We'll see what happens.
All right. Just like you should be getting your insurance needs taken a look at. We're coming toward the end of the year. It's a great time to assess what you have. Your car insurance, your home insurance. Should you bundle those and save? You absolutely should. And State Farm is the brand that you trust. Right? You've seen all the commercials with Patrick Mahomes and Coach and Kelsey and all that. I mean, they trust them. I trust them. Bob Watson has been my State Farm agent for almost 30 years. I would not put my family's insurance needs in anyone else's hands. You got to find somebody that you trust, and for me, that is Bob Watson at State Farm. And he'd be happy to give you a rate check, look at everything that you pay insurance for now, and bundling will save you money. 816-229-7878. 816-229-7878. Licensed in Missouri and Kansas, and he can handle it all. Auto, home, life, commercial insurance. And, when the shit hits the fan, that's when insurance really matters. When something bad happens, you got to call somebody that you trust. And I trust Bob Watson. If you're going with some cut rate insurance agency, God knows who you're going to have. And I guarantee you the first answer they're going to give you is no.
Right.
That's what they're conditioned to do. Bob Watson's been in business for 50 years because, like a good neighbor, State Farm and Bob Watson is there. In fact, Bob Watson was a young State Farm guy when Senator Joe Biden was representing the great state of Delaware. And here we are 50 years later, and he said he wrecked the Democrat Party. You believe that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's they have a lot of catching up to do for sure.
They really do. And we're going to have a guest who's been on before, Phil Lavoda, who we're going to ask him about the state of the Democrat policy and how they rebuild that party. Because the guy who claimed, I am going to be a transitional figure. Now, if I'm a rank and file Democrat, I see that as you are a one-term guy. And then we're going to move on to the next generation of Democrats. Well, somewhere along the line, when you give the guy the ultimate power to be leader of the free world, he said, hey, I kind of like it here, right? The ice cream's always in the freezer. Everybody kowtows to me. I kind of like it. I'm going to stay. And then he face planted at that debate, and then panic ensued in the Democrat Party. That's how we got Kamala Harris, and the rest is going to be recorded history. So by way of contrast to the younger than him, vibrant-looking Donald Trump, we bring you Joe Biden, who at the same time, after he pardons Hunter, right, he gets on Air Force One, get the hell out of Dodge, do something really bad. It's like the person who farted and then runs away. Okay, so he farted out a pardon for his son, got on Air Force One, and he went over to Africa. This is the guy who said, and everybody around him carried the message, he's vibrant, he's running circles around us in the White House. This guy deserved 4 more years. I don't know that he can make it 4 more weeks.
Joe Biden, President of the United States of America.
Now you got to watch it.
His Excellency,
Because you can claim that we put up a picture of him like blinking or closing his eyes. But this is almost like my dog, baby Harry. As you're watching the video, because Harry will do this from time to time. Harry will the lids get heavy. This guy is droning on. I'm getting the translation, but I don't know what the hell he's saying. He reminds me of Corn Pop. Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he's almost there. Almost there.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Almost there. You almost want to have Brahms under this. Da 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 da. Oh yeah, he's getting really sleepy. And I don't think he's coming back from that one, Kurt. He's out. He's out.
I honestly identify with this. I'm pro Joe Biden in this scenario.
You fall asleep in meetings?
No, it's just like, dude, you're like at some like random African meeting. Who gives a shit? Why am I here? This is boring. This sucks.
Well, he's president. He didn't have to go. Right? He could have sent Anthony Blinken.
I think he just, with his senility, he doesn't have the social filter anymore. Like he
look at
doesn't
this.
know.
The hand almost falls.
He doesn't have the social filter to be like, no, like keep look alert, like look like you're paying attention, even though you're obviously not, because nobody cares about any of these countries or whatever. You know, it's like he has to. He doesn't know, or he does know, but he's forgotten because of his senility that he's supposed to pretend to care about this. So he's just like totally transparent. He's like, shit. What time do we get out of here, man? Where's the ice cream?
Where's the ice cream? I need to have the ice cream. And then you got another clip, which I thought was really interesting, and that is Donald Trump hanging with Jill Biden in Paris. Now, you know, you've seen the pictures when Trump went to the White House. They were hanging out. They took a selfie.
All
the three
smiles,
of them.
man.
All smiles.
Yeah, and so there was a picture that was circulating. A few things, you know, it's been really interesting, like the Joe Biden Kamala Harris dynamic since she lost the election. Like, it appears, you know, it's a selective editing, of course, but it appears that they, you know, are not really speaking to each other, or, you know, Jill Biden is like giving her the cold shoulder, you know, in public appearances and stuff like that. But they're all smiles around Trump, including Jill Biden, who is giving him the eyes right here. This is in Paris, I think, at the Notre Dame. And so Trump takes that picture and uses it to make an ad for his new fight cologne. So it says, here are my new Trump perfumes and colognes. I call them fight because they represent us winning. Great Christmas gifts for the family. Go to gettrumpfragrances.com. And then it's a picture of Jill Biden giving him the eyes. I mean, we're just in the best timeline. You know, I will say this. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, Joe Biden would be the funniest president we've maybe ever had, certainly in my lifetime. But he's just second because Trump is just unstoppable. I mean, the guy is hilarious.
I would say the difference there is we're laughing at Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And we're laughing with Donald Trump.
Correct.
There is a difference there. And of course, I'm sure Joy Reid just loved this and probably had a head explosion moment, and we'll need to put her wig back on.
They'll probably have a new charge that they'll levy against Trump. Like, he doesn't have permission to use her image in the whatever, you know, they'll try and throw him in jail again over that somehow.
That's your Jill Biden impersonation. Remember when you did that after some event he was at in Georgia after the debate?
Oh, yeah, when she was like, you read all the words! You talked the whole time. You did great. Yay! Or whatever it was. Yeah, that was real weird.
All right, next week on the podcast, this is I think this is going to be very interesting. I've made friends with a guy named Mark Falter. That name may not mean anything to you, Kurt, but he hosts a show on the weekends on radio in Kansas City called the Retirement Income Hour. And he is brilliant. And I've never given the guy a dime. He doesn't have any of my investments, yet every week on his show, I can pull something out that it's like, ooh, that's interesting. And he has some interesting takes moving forward on what the next administration is going to mean for you and your retirement. And I asked him to come on the podcast, and he said he would be glad to do that. So he's going to be a guest next week. So that's another podcast episode I'm looking forward to, and I hope you are too. Until then, until next week, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to DaleCarter'sAmerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.